Hello everyone, how y'all doing tonight? Welcome to Hump Day, middle of the week. It's all downhill from here, folks. We're going to do something a little different tonight. We finished up the Hidden Ones DLC on Saturday, and on Monday and Tuesday we did a bunch of side missions. And the side missions were anyway pretty much all cleaned up. There were none left to do, but I went around the map earlier today and found, I don't know how many did I find, 8 more side missions. But we're not here to do those tonight. We may save those for when Curse of the Pharaohs comes out, and we'll do those at the beginning of the streams when we start doing that, because Curse of the Pharaohs is supposed to raise the level cap from 45 to 55. So we'll do those then to help us get leveled up so we can get back to the level cap, which is typically a moving target as games get updates and releases and DLC and stuff. So anyway, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to do the Discovery Tour. That is something that just came out last Tuesday, I believe it was. It's a free update to the game. If you have the game or are considering getting it, you do not have to pay for this. It should automatically have updated for you. And this is essentially, there's no combat, there's no enemies. I don't even know if the people that I'm going to be doing these as are people from the game, whether they're going to even have their gear on them, or whether it's just going to be their outfits. So we'll find out. My understanding is there are 75 tours in all, and they range anywhere from 3 minutes to 20 minutes each. So there's a substantial amount of stuff in here, and it's supposed to be, pretty accurate from what I've seen. The reviews I've seen have been pretty good. So I'm anxious to get a look at this. So I'm not sure how much talking I will be doing tonight, and there may be a lot of listening, because I understand that there is a narrator of some kind as we do these. So let's give it a shot. We will not be doing all of the tours tonight, nor will we be streaming them all. This is just a taste of what it's like and what it is, what it's all about, that kind of stuff. My understanding also is you can do these as different characters. Content curated by Egyptologists and hundreds of images sourced from museums and libraries around the world. We hope to share with you the passion that inhabited us for the 4 years it took to develop Assassin's Creed Origins.
Welcome to Discovery Tour by Assassin's Creed Ancient Egypt.
Guided tours will take you through majestic landmarks and acquaint you with ancient Egyptians and their culture. Enjoy the vast panoramas of this beautiful country through the eyes of your eagle, or use an avatar to climb to the very top of the Great Pyramid. We've already done that. Navigate a boat along the banks of the River Nile, or ride a horse across deserts and lush, fertile lands. And when a view truly captures your fascination, take a picture using the photo mode and share it with your friends. Hope you enjoy this experience. There are achievements and trophies associated with this. There are 3. We'll likely be getting 2 of those tonight. Looks like we're starting off as Aya. Alright, looks like the blue shields are going to be our targets. Oops. Alright, so that was going to be my first question is... Alright, so it looks like there is a tour, and based on... we have a menu for this too. Okay, the different icons correspond to a different type of tour. General Egypt, there are 20 of these, so alright. It also tells you the estimated time and what they're about, so alright, cool. Number of stations. I guess that's the number of stations for each one. Not much, just the prelude for the...
Welcome to Alexandria. Planning of the city.
Get to the chopper!
Alexander's plan to build his great city began with a verse from Homer's Odyssey. There is, in front of Egypt, in the sea with many swells, an island called Pharos. Guided by these clues, Alexander the Great founded his future city at the western end of the Nile Delta. Though Alexander considered this location ideal
Let me know
for
if
his
I need to
great
raise the
city,
volume some.
it presented considerable challenges. Too difficult to access during storms, the surrounding swamps threatened disease, and the limestone soil prevented the growth of healthy crops. However, due to the influence of his mentor Aristotle, Alexander the Great recognized that the true value was its strategic emplacement. Alexander knew that in controlling Pelusium to the east, Memphis to the south, and his crowning glory Alexandria to the west, he would create a triangular stronghold, allowing him to control the entire delta while giving him access to the Mediterranean.
You can do these as different people. I don't know if you can switch in the middle of it or not. I wish it would stop popping that up. Alright, so yeah, these are all the people you can do these as. Layla Hassan, William Miles, those are, for those of you familiar with the series, there's a modern day component to these games, and those are the two people that are in the modern day scenes or chapters or whatever. So yeah, you can choose to be any one of these people. I don't know that it's going to change anything, but you can do it if you like.
The Great Walls of Alexandria had a humble beginning. Lacking chalk to outline the future city's foundations, architects were forced to use flour instead. Clouds of migrating birds swept down and ate the flour, erasing the plans. This prompted Alexander to seek guidance from the oracles, who reassured him that his future city was destined to feed a large population. Excavations led by Mahmud Bey el-Falaki in the 19th century revealed that the wall enclosure measured approximately 5.2 kilometers in length and 2.2 kilometers in width. It was roughly 9 meters in height.
Let's see what the more info stuff does. Alright, I guess it's the actual, some of the actual paintings and drawings and stuff from back then. It looks like the same text. Where the picture came from. Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. This is a free update for those of you that have the game or are considering getting it. So you don't have to pay for this if you're interested in learning all of this stuff.
These formidable ancient walls would resist a number of attacks, including fending off the king of Syria in 169 BCE. It wasn't until 295 CE that they eventually fell to Roman Emperor Diocletian, and this only after 8 months of relentless assault.
Looks like the Washington Monument in D.C. There are no enemies. You're not carrying any of your weapons.
Alexandria's principal architect, Dinocrates, chose a Hippodamian grid plan, The grid maximized functionality, with wide, straight roads and canals running beneath them. Alexander recognized the military value of the city's design. The wide, parallel streets gave him optimal surveillance
Plenty
of
of
the
width
city,
for carts.
while allowing the unobstructed flow of troops.
It's an amphitheater. I guess there's nothing preventing you from just going off and doing whatever. I don't know, unless you just wanted to look.
A central corridor ran from the Mediterranean's north port down to Lake Mareotis to the south. This thoroughfare acted as an unobstructed link for commercial trade and travel between the two ports. Many of the streets were bordered with grand buildings and parks, including Canopic Street, with its impressive gate bordering the eastern end.
Oh, nice. Alright, you can see the walls around the city there. That makes it look significantly bigger than it is in the game. Obviously they have to shrink it down some for the game. It'll take you forever to traverse it.
Alexandria was most likely built upon an already existing Egyptian village. Upon its completion, the Egyptians reviled the city, refusing to call it by its founder's name. Instead, they called it Raked, the building, as a mark of disdain, which was later Hellenized into Rakotis. Despite this, the name Alexandria would remain.
The Library of Alexandria as well. Nice. Well, I have one as well. I think I probably mentioned that before. Two actually. I got one up here and one downstairs. You can now explore ancient Egypt at your own pace, or press the menu button to choose a new tour by opening the pause menu. See, I don't know why they have to show that to me every time. Alright, so we're going to pick a different character. Let's do Julius Caesar. Alright, so I guess these are all... These are all about the city itself. Here's a different one here. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of effort to say, okay, have they seen this before? Yes. Don't show it anymore. Unless I missed a button on there to, that says, don't remind me or don't show this again, that kind of thing. All right, let's see. So, leather and linen in ancient Egypt. Learn about the uses of leather and linen in ancient Egypt. 4 minutes. The reason I'm picking that one is because it's just a different, I guess, a different grouping of... Oh man, where's Big Bird? Come on, dude. You gotta have Julius Caesar riding Big Bird. And even though I mentioned before, they had to shrink the city down some because it's a video game, but it's still freaking huge. Yeah, Yes, he can't do. Ah, I can do picture mode still. Hey, whoa, 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 whoa.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere.
Okay. A narrator talking about himself. I definitely want to go down to the the Great Pyramids and then the Great Sphinx down in the Giza area. I definitely want to go there. So if there, if there's any area or anything in particular you guys wanted to see, just speak up. Why are those white? It's interesting. All right, let's do this one. Leather and linen. 4 minutes. Start the tour.
Welcome to Leather and Linen in Ancient Egypt.
Leather and lace. Caesar walking among the little people.
Tanning, a process which dates from prehistoric times, was present although not highly valued in Egypt due to the heat. Leather was reserved mainly for things such as sandals, leather bags, dagger sheaths, quivers, and other similar items. Leopard hides, unlike regular leather, were highly valued and usually worn by priests.
What is that thing that he's got in his hand? Some kind of tool, maybe? Know that too. Who knew? Who knew the Egyptians invented the crowbar? Centuries ahead of their time. All right, see the icon down there? It's marked that position as being done.
Valued for its coolness and freshness in hot weather, linen was the fiber most commonly used for fabrics and textiles. It was produced from flax, which was plentiful in Egypt. Fibers were usually dyed before weaving. While color was used in the production of textiles, dyes weren't commonly used for clothing, and most Egyptians wore white. The
Okay, that
color
would explain
represented
that.
spiritual purity, a goal to reach for every day of one's mortal life.
Mortal life, notice that. Coarse spin, medium weave. Still like to know what those are for. Like placeholders for something, people, maybe. Dyes, maybe.
Various shades were achieved using woad, a dye produced from the leaves of Isis tinctoria. The plant was cultivated for this purpose within the Nile Delta and allowed for the creation of various colors. For example, different maceration times of the leaves would result in colors ranging from red to green, while adding in limestone shifted it to blue. During the Greco-Roman period, other ingredients were found, resulting in a wider range of colors. This area's style is strongly influenced by the dye baths and tanneries of modern-day Fes in
Wow,
Morocco.
yeah, it looks like a lot.
This
That
helped
whole area.
Ubisoft envision what
All the
such
drying on the
locations might have
roofs.
been like in ancient Egypt. While this tannery is within the city walls, back then they were often found outside the city boundaries. The tanner's trade was considered off-putting by the Greeks, as all these operations resulted in noxious smells.
Wow. They got a lot of dyeing to do. No pun intended. Look like some kids working too. Child labor laws! Alright, let's see. Let's switch characters again. I'm probably gonna roll my eyes every time we see that. Let's do Layla. She, like I said before, she was one of the modern day people. One of the people in the modern day parts of the game. Which there really wasn't that much of. Although technically you can go back to that anytime you want. It's a little more... Let's see. Alright, we've got a different one over here. I want to at least do one of each to start off with. Learn how hieroglyphs were identified and deciphered. Yes. I definitely want to see that. Oh, we can fast travel directly to it. Nice. I definitely like that. Make it faster to go by or go through. Yeah, she's the one. She's a descendant of XB1X, and that's the tie-in for the whole Abstergo and the DNA and the memories and all that. She's the one that's the answer. The XB1X is her ancestor. Number of stations. Start to tour 8. Jean-Francois Champollion. That's right. I vaguely remember that name. It's the one that deciphered the hieroglyphs.
Welcome to Jean-Francois Champollion. Between the 5th century CE and the Renaissance, knowledge of hieroglyphs was entirely lost. Many enthusiasts tackled the challenge of deciphering the language with little success. Some groundwork was made with various researchers identifying names and some grammatical structure, and confirming that cartouches were markers for royal names. They were still missing a critical piece
Stargate
of information
SG-1
that would eventually be revealed thanks to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone.
The Rosetta Stone was found in 1799 by Bouchard, a soldier in Napoleon's army. The stela dates from 196 BCE, written in ancient Egyptian and Greek with 3 scripts: hieroglyphics, Demotic, and Greek alphabet. Following the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte in 1801, the English took possession of the stone. It has been at the British Museum since 1802 and remains the most visited object of the museum to date.
I was wondering if somebody was going to make a comment to that effect. Learn a new language today. Yeah, you can distinctly see the 3 different languages, 3 different scripts. 1802 in the British Museum. That's a long time.
The first translation was of the Greek section only in 1803. It detailed a decree of Pharaoh Ptolemy V, reminding the citizens that their pharaoh had led Egypt to prosperity. It was fully translated 20 years after by Jean-François Champollion, who was working with a facsimile.
Excuse me. All right, so 1 year, I guess, after the British took control of it, I guess they said he used a facsimile, so maybe he had a piece of paper and he just rubbed it with a pencil.
Through his studies of the stone, Champollion was able to make a critical observation that would unlock the whole mystery: that hieroglyphics were not only ideograms, but also phonograms. Hieroglyphs consist of phonetic glyphs, single characters, and logograms. Essentially, they are a combination of phonetics, alphabet, and full words, which in total form a language.
Okay. So each picture is not necessarily a letter or a word. It can be a sentence and much more than that. Those are his notes, I assume.
While studying the stone, Champollion realized that there was a difference in the number of hieroglyphic characters in relation to the number of Greek characters for the same word. This led him to believe that hieroglyphs must have phonetic characteristics. This was the first step to unlocking the Rosetta Stone's secrets.
Bronze. Foundation plaque from the Serapeum in Alexandria showing the Greek and Egyptian inscriptions, 221 to 204 BC. Oh, kitty, where's the kitty? Hey, kitty. She gonna pet the kitty? Come on. Come on, Layla.
To prove this theory, Champollion began identifying Egyptian rulers' names and then compared their phonetic pronunciation to the Greek version. For example, Cheops had been the Greek name given by ancient chroniclers to the owner of the Great Pyramid, Khufu. The next step for Champollion was to confirm that his approach was verifiable by using the Philae obelisk as an additional reference. Engraved in the obelisk are 2 inscriptions in Egyptian hieroglyphs and Greek. Once he confirmed the names of Ptolemy and Cleopatra within these texts and confirmed the same phonetic patterns as on the Rosetta Stone, Champollion knew he was on the right track.
How old is that picture? 1880?
Champollion had already mastered several ancient languages when he took on deciphering the Rosetta Stone. He used his knowledge of Coptic to identify the solar disk hieroglyph on the obelisk as the phonetic translation of Ra. Further translation only strengthened his conclusion. Egyptian hieroglyphs encompass the alphabet in both phonetics and determinative ways, which means that the symbol represents the word itself.
Let's see, who can we... Unbelievable. Let's do Camus. We saw references to Camus. He is Aya and Bayek's son. He's but a wee lass. Or lad, sorry. Wee lad. See if we can find... Ah, here we go. Looks like pyramids. A whole bunch of pyramid stuff down here, as you might expect. Let's do the Sphinx first. That's right there. The riddles and... Wow, 22 stations. It's going to take a while. 15 minutes.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
Learned about the Great Sphinx of Giza and different changes the Sphinx endured through time.
Welcome to the Riddles of the Sphinx.
Look at it, just a carefree kid just waving his arms.
A sphinx was originally meant to be a personification of the king. The human head, wearing pharaonic regalia, was fused with the body of a lion, thus sharing the qualities the powerful animal possessed, namely its power, the swiftness of its attack, and its majestic authority. By these very virtues, it was also considered a symbol of protection. Unsurprisingly, statues of sphinxes could be found along the dromas, protectors of the path taken by the gods to reach the temples. Over the centuries, enthusiasts and historians alike have wondered, who built the Sphinx? For what purpose? And who does it represent? These questions remain unanswered. Several theories do exist, however, some more credible than others. One theory supposes that Jedefre chose to pay homage to his father Khufu by building the Great Sphinx of Giza. The stone temple on the eastern face of the Sphinx would have been added later on by his brother and successor, Khafre, in order to strengthen the divine worship of their father. It would be the first Egyptian temple oriented with the sun.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know that. They're singing.
Another theory suggests that the Sphinx was built by Khafre and was meant to represent him. The arguments to support this hypothesis are based on the fact that the limestone beds used for the main work of the Temple of the Sphinx are geographically and architecturally similar to the Valley Temple of Khafre. Some believe that Khufu himself built the Sphinx, which was later finished under his successors, Jetafre and Khafre. These arguments are based on the stylistics of the engraving, the typology of the nemes, and the absence of a beard at the time of construction.
Hey, Hipster Canine, thank you for the follow. Welcome. How you doing tonight? Welcome to the igloo. Doing some discovery tour tonight.
While ancient Egypt as a whole leaves a rather monochrome vision of its monuments and statuary, it is vital to understand that in ancient times, absolutely everything was painted. The sun, eating away at the pigments of the colors, the sand, the climate, and the implacable impact of time, unfortunately destroyed the glorious colors of the Sphinx of Giza. Documents from an Arab Egyptologist of the 12th century, Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi, indicate that traces of red were still visible in his time. Today, however, the only color that remains are traces of red close to the ears of the Sphinx, as well as hints of blue and yellow on the nemes, traditional colors for that type of headdress. The pigments for the color red were man-made, obtained by mixing different products such as clay, quartz sand, and very finely crushed hematite.
I bet stuff like that probably looked pretty damn spectacular back in the day when they were built.
Red had a strong symbolism in ancient Egypt. It was both the color of life and the color of death. It could represent the sands of the desert or the brilliance of the sun. Red was also associated with the god Seth, vengeful and destructive. The Egyptian word for red, deshur, is also the word which was used to signify the desert, or the royal crown of Lower Egypt. In art, red was also the color used to paint the bodies of men, while yellow was used for women. It is possible that there were also color restoration efforts during the Saite period about 600 years before Cleopatra's rule, as indicated by notes on the inventory stele, discovered in 1858 by Auguste Mariette. It is because of this that the team made the decision to display it with its full range of colors, even though the Sphinx's colors would have likely faded by Cleopatra's time. Dating from the 4th dynasty, approximately 2600 to 2500 BCE, the Great Sphinx of Giza is the oldest and largest sphinx that we know of. Carved from a natural limestone outcrop, the Sphinx measures 19.8 meters in height, 73.2 meters in length, and 14 meters in width.
Interesting that they would say that. The largest sphinx that we know of. Where else would you hide something that big?
In order to bring polish to the imposing monument, several blocks of limestone were added after the initial construction phase. Since then, there have been numerous attempts at preservation. The polish present in the game integrates some aspects of modern restoration attempts. The team made this choice to present a more iconic version of the Sphinx of Giza to the player. Today, the Sphinx is called the Terrifying One. This appellation is translated from its Arabic name, Abu al-Hal, which in turn was derived from Baluba in Coptic.
Baluba. Yeah, see how much is all worn away? Well, of course, the pyramids, too.
The Sphinx as a whole was carved in situ from a natural stone promontory.
In place.
Its head was built in a limestone peak of the Mukutam Plate, and the body was sculpted in the underlying rock layer where it is located. The degradation of the Sphinx is due in particular to wind erosion and the different quality of limestone used in its construction. The level of sodium contained in the groundwater which abuts the stone is also a contributing factor.
Yeah, 19th century and it already looked like that.
The natural bedrock is seen through the oblique natural strata of the Sphinx's body that are similar to the surrounding limestone. Since antiquity, people have always believed there was a hidden tomb deep within the Sphinx. It is thought that attempts to plunder the Sphinx began as far back as the First Intermediate
You can
period.
go inside it during the game.
Since then, numerous attempts to pierce the Sphinx's secrets have been carried out, leaving indelible scars upon the monument.
Yeah, see right here. Oh man, I forced my way in here. Yeah, see, I won't go any farther because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, you can't go inside.
"12 meters long and cut during pharaonic times, another entrance in the back of the Sphinx aroused curiosity. Although Thutmose IV attempted to seal it off, it was possibly reopened by treasure hunters. It was rediscovered by Howard Vyse and mapped more recently by Mark Lehner. This entrance at the back of the Sphinx leads to different cavities of a few meters each, in directions going inside the statue's body and under the surface. The team has used this opportunity to extrapolate a little more. While there have been no major discoveries pertaining to the Sphinx of Giza in recent years, theories and hypotheses continue to emerge. Without validation provided by archaeological sources, however, they remain unsubstantiated. The first of the main theories as to the Sphinx of Giza's meaning posits that the Sphinx was originally a massive representation of the god Anubis. Its principal arguments are that the head of the Sphinx is disproportionate compared to the size of its body. The second theory believes that the representation of two sphinxes on the stela of Thutmose IV would indicate that another stone sphinx had existed on the site itself, possibly even in paired symmetry on the other side of the Nile. However, neither of these theories can be verified in any way.
Well, even if there was another one, it's completely disappeared.
Several scientific projects using new technologies have been put in place in the past decades. The most important was led by Mark Lehner and his team, who specialize in the study and survey of the Giza Plateau, including the Sphinx site. The mapping made it possible to see the materials used to construct the Sphinx, analyze the different layers of erosion, and figure out the most fragile areas to protect. After a few attempts at giving the Sphinx artistic proportions, the team instead decided to use photogrammetry mapping to faithfully reproduce the proportions of the Sphinx.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know too, right? I mean, it's got to be a good bit of it that's buried below what is now ground level.
What the Sphinx of Giza represented during its construction and how the Sphinx was perceived by the Egyptians of the New Kingdom are two very different matters. Originally a representation of the king imbued with the power of the lion, the Sphinx was eventually viewed as a direct representation of the most divine. It is theorized that kings of the New Kingdom believed that the Sphinx of Giza was the one who recognized and legitimized the ruler of Egypt. Thus, despite the fact the Sphinx of Giza was partially buried under the sand during his reign, Amenhotep II knew that the monument was of great importance.
I say they're saying right there, even back then, a portion of it was buried under the sand.
Amenhotep II built a second temple dedicated for the Sphinx as Horemakhet to pay homage to Khufu and Khafre, his predecessors. It became a common habit for this dynasty to spend time with their royal courts at the Sphinx. Its sanctuary became known as Setepet, the Chosen. Egyptologist Mark Lehner believed that Amenhotep II built a statue of himself anchored between the paws of the Sphinx, likely to legitimize his reign, alongside a stela found by Salim Hassan. Many other pharaohs of this dynasty, such as Tutankhamun and Ramses II, also left marks of their passage in a similar fashion, sometimes even stripping the stones of nearby temples and pyramids to do so. Amenhotep II's son and successor, Thutmose IV, was a frequent offender.
It's almost gone.
While sleeping between the Sphinx's paws, the future Thutmose IV saw in a dream the god Horemakhet proclaiming his coming accession on the throne of the two lands. This was, of course, on the condition that he remove all of the sand covering the Sphinx, which stood guard as the personification of the god, and should thus never be engulfed by the sands of the desert.
Yeah, see how much of it's worn away in the pyramid in the back compared to the top.
The 15-ton dream stela built by Thutmose IV to commemorate his dream was discovered by an Italian Egyptologist, Giovanni Battista Caviglia, in 1818, when he undertook the task of freeing the Sphinx from the sand, which had, yet again, covered it. Caviglia was looking for an entrance into the structure of the Sphinx, but instead he discovered an open-air chapel and stelas between the paws. Ashes from a ceremony were still present. Protected by sand, they quite possibly were from the last ceremonies in Roman times. That same year, Caviglia discovered fragments of the Sphinx's beard that had probably been added during the New Kingdom. If many of these pieces are held by museums in Cairo, a fragment is displayed at the British Museum, along with a piece of the uraeus that was on the Sphinx's headdress. It is believed this fragment of beard was possibly kept in place thanks to the statue of Amenhotep II which was supposed to be located under the head of the Sphinx.
Somebody's sitting up on top of the head. Cavilia, I assume.
A popular cultural legend purports that the nose of the Sphinx of Giza was lost during the time of Napoleon Bonaparte to the cannon fire of French soldiers in training. However, engravings from before the time of that campaign already depicted the Sphinx without a nose, indicating that it had been removed before the French campaign. The most plausible hypothesis is based on the research of the German historian Ulrich Harman. During the 1980s, Harman compiled medieval sources written by Arab authors. In doing so, he discovered that the Sphinx was once perceived as a favorable omen, a deity supporting sediment-nurturing floods and crops. Around 1378, a Sufi by the name of Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar could not stand this vision of the monument, and in an iconoclastic act, broke the nose of the Sphinx.
Ow.
According to the texts, he was then hanged and burned between the legs of the Sphinx for his crime.
Wow. Alright, we'll switch again. Let's do Cleopatra this time. Whoa. Alright, let's see. What's this one down here? Looks like docks. Overview of the Giza necropolis. Yeah, I don't think it would be quite that bad, but it's probably pretty serious. Subterranean chamber, upper chambers, funerary monuments. Understand the structure of the Great Pyramid. Let's do that one. 15 stations, 9 minutes. You can climb to the top of those, and you can also slide down if you like.
Welcome to Secrets of the Great Pyramid. Built around 2550 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza is considered one of the most iconic structures of Egypt. It is the biggest of the pyramids and the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. The numbers associated to the Great Pyramid of Giza are impressive. A workforce of over 20,000 people, 6 million tons of stone, and 20 years of construction.
Whoopie fucking do.
Undertaking for a pharaoh's tomb.
Hey, what's up, sir? "20 years, yeah. I mean, whew.
The construction of the Great Pyramid was also a display of power and opulence on the part of Khufu. It is part of the pharaoh's vast funerary complex, which also includes 2 temples, 3 satellite pyramids, a causeway, and a builder's necropolis. We can guess that the intent behind the construction of these monuments was Khufu's way of declaring himself one of the most powerful pharaohs to rule a unified Egypt. New insights into engineering and ancient Egyptian culture are still being revealed over 4,500 years later. For example, a recently unearthed papyrus offers a glimpse into the life of a tradesman at the time of the pyramid's construction.
Any weapons there?
Also, a logbook belonging to a team leader during the building gives details on the craftsmen, their work schedules, and the raw materials required.
No, I didn't hear that. Well, when was this? Was this recent?
It is interesting to note
Solar
that by
boat.
Cleopatra's time, the pyramid's celestial purpose, its construction, and the function of its mysterious inner chambers was already unclear. Today, it is only through dedicated research that we have begun to grasp some of the Great Pyramid's mysteries.
Some kind of casting material? 2005.
The Egyptians had polished their design for centuries by the time work on the Great Pyramid began. Intended as a tomb for Khufu, the Great Pyramid's structural design has been considered to be nearly perfect by engineers and historians ever since.
Oh no, Abydos. No, more Stargate SG-1. The Goa'uld. Watch out for the snakes.
Precisely oriented north-south to the 4 cardinal points of a compass, the length of each side of the Great Pyramid at its base was 230 meters, and its original height was 147 meters. The pyramid is a mere 0.05% error away from being a perfect square.
Wow. Wow. Something that big back in that time. Goodness gracious. A lost Mayan city. Guatemala.
In order to achieve the shape of a true pyramid, the design required many considerations in the planning phases as well as precision during execution. It was especially critical that they control the angle of inclination on all
Dude,
sides
how did they
at
cut?
every stage of construction.
60,000 buildings? Jeez.
Materials for the Great Pyramid consisted of quarried limestone blocks, weighing between 2 to 15 tons each. The methods of moving these blocks into place is still debated by architects and Egyptologists. The
How?
precision of its design in an age with only soft metal tools, as well as the enormous scale of its construction, make the Great Pyramid one of the most impressive feats of human engineering.
Or was it human engineering, right, Tippy? Wink, wink. Aliens, man. Take a bit of a detour. The overlords. Duh. Predators. Oh, come on, Cleo. You can actually just, there's a fast travel spot at the top of this one. So you can just fast travel to the top. Uh-oh, this is going to be, I'm going to have to go across. Lots of across. No! Alright, fine. We'll slide down from here. Which is really all I was doing it for anyway.
It's estimated that it took between 600,000 and 2 million blocks of stone to build the Great Pyramid. Experts calculate it would have required men to move 12 blocks every hour around the clock for 20 years to place the 2.3 million stones the monument is made of.
Damn.
While the interior chambers were built with red granite from a swan, most of the pyramid was made from local limestone, weighing between 2 to 15 tons per block. There is debate on how the pyramid stones were moved into place. Recent research is exploring the idea that it was built around a large interior ramp.
Okay, then if that's true, then you would think that they would have found the ramp by now, right? Oh, shit. Look at the picture.
While the interior chambers were built with red granite from a swan, most of the pyramid was made from local limestone, weighing between 2 to 15 tons per block. There is debate on how the pyramid stones were moved into place. Recent research is exploring the idea that it was built around a large interior ramp. The recently discovered logbook confirms that the high-quality limestone of the
That's what I'm saying. You would have think that if it was still inside, they would have found it by now.
Quarry in Tura. Once complete, the smooth white polished stone of the Great Pyramid would have reflected the sunlight like a beacon, earning it the name the Horizon of Khufu.
Brought by boat from a quarry in Tura. I don't know where Tura is.
Over the centuries, thieves and travelers attempted to access the Great Pyramid numerous times. Ancient writings describe details of its interior, proof that some made their way within, though who gained entrance first and when is unknown. The main entrance of the Great Pyramid is located 17 meters above ground level. It faces north, likely in order to align with the North Star. Though the entrance passageway had been discovered in antiquity, any further access into the Great Pyramid was stopped by massive vertical slabs of rock. As such, present-day visitors to the pyramid must use the robber's entrance. robber's entrance is reported to have been opened in the 9th century by Caliph al-Mamun. In search of treasure, the Caliph had his men dig their way inside the Great Pyramid.
Overkill!
The most likely scenario is that they enlarged a corridor which had been created by tomb robbers during antiquity.
You can't go
As
in these,
such,
by the way.
this is how the team can justify access to this wonder.
During the game, you can go into the pyramids. It's going down towards the center.
Attempts to gain entry to the Great Pyramid and uncover its potential secrets continued throughout the centuries. In the 19th century, the belief that another entry existed at the south side resulted in a hole being blasted into the pyramid side, with no results for the damage that was done. While the search is still ongoing today to uncover more hidden rooms and passageways, conservation is the primary concern of all such efforts.
Yeah, they don't want people just coming in and ransack the place.
Don't forget, you can still use photo mode at any time.
Not bad!
Let's see, who can we go as this time? Shadia. She was a little girl that was in a kind of a lengthy side quest. Yeah, see, the hyenas aren't gonna bother her now. They'd eat her for lunch if it was part of the main game. All right, let's see. So what? Damn. Anything else over here? Funerary complexes. There's 2 of those. The origin of the pyramid. Let's go over there and do that one. Learn about the early funerary monuments of ancient Egypt and their evolution into the pyramidal structure we know so well today. 5 minutes, 7 stations.
Welcome to the origin of the pyramid. The origin of the word pyramid is controversial. Most believe that it originates with the Greek word pyramis, which referred to a bread of conical shape. Life and death in ancient Egypt were modeled on the cycle of the sun. The perfect shape of the smooth-faced pyramid became associated with the metaphor of the pharaoh transformed into one of the sun's rays in death. Pyramids represented the Benben, the primordial mound of the Heliopolitan creation myth. These stories permeated every aspect of Egyptian life to a greater or lesser extent.
Can't get a gun. Can't get any weapons in here. There's no reason to. There's no fighting or no enemies either. I know, right? It's like trying to pronounce some of these Egyptian names. It's like tongue-tied, tongue-twisted. Say what again? There is no enemies and no combat in this. There's no reason to have a weapon.
Was different, depending on whether one was located in Lower Egypt or Upper Egypt. Well before the pyramid, there was the burial pits. It is on the site of Merimde Beni Salome in Lower Egypt that we find the oldest funerary site, dating back to 5000 BCE.
Yeah, that means no guns.
Study of the
Yes.
tombs revealed that the bodies of the deceased were deposited in a shallow grave, in a fetal position. Though a few objects were recovered from these graves, they offered no insight as to the social class of those interred within.
Burial pits. Yep, it's just a tour. Discovery tour. That's what the title of the stream says. It's just historical tour.
In Upper
It's
Egypt,
documentary
pre-dynastic
type stuff.
practices are easier to study, but reveal more complex funerary rites. They are divided into two cultural phases, Badarian and Nagada. The Badarian phase ranged from 4400 BCE to 3800 BCE. Small necropolises were discovered on the outskirts of villages, revealing the emergence of a funerary cult. The bodies of the deceased were lowered into an oval grave and covered with goat or gazelle skins. Items needed in everyday life were added alongside the body.
Take them with them into the next life, or the afterlife, I guess. Hey, Lancelot, how you doing? Welcome back. How's it going? Just hold up in the fetal horses. Doing good, doing good. We're doing Discovery Tour tonight, so sit back, grab a chair, grab a drink. Just some chill stuff. No enemies, no fighting. This is just a learning experience, like Alien King said.
During the three Nagada periods ranging from 4000 BCE to 3510 BCE, funerary practices evolved in complexity. The shape of tombs changed from oval to rectangular, mimicking the homes of the living. The size of the burials increased and funerary items became more stylized and numerous. Tombs gained complexity, with masonry, wooden veneers, or raw bricks added to strengthen the structures. In time, socially stratified necropolises emerged.
Necropolises,
For example, in Hyrcanopolis, the elite and commoners had separate necropolises. The term mastaba, meaning massive bench in dialectal
Massive
Arabic,
bench.
refers to a form of funerary architecture that was present in Egypt from the Archaic period to the Middle Kingdom. An evolution of the burial pit, mastabas were generally composed of two parts. A structure was built above the ground in the form of a massive rectangle with stepped walls, and a subterranean burial chamber was located underneath. Smaller mastabas often surrounded the much larger tomb of the king. These generally held the remains of the king's relatives and courtiers.
God, courtiers. (1997).
The arrangement of the substructure of the mastaba evolved during the course of the Old Kingdom. From the 5th dynasty onwards, mastabas often featured multi-roomed substructures, with sometimes up to 30 rooms. Also, the quantity and quality of decorated surfaces increased noticeably, as well as the number of statues found within.
Model of the tomb of Perneb. Scale 1/20th.
The 6th dynasty would see art used to its utmost. The entire surface of a mastaba would be covered in scenes of daily life, illustrating the prosperity of those lucky enough to comfortably spend eternity near the pyramid of a pharaoh.
Eternity.
The best example of this type of mastaba is the tomb of Meroruka in Saqqara.
All right, let's see. People at the bottom are just generic people. Oh, I guess some Bayek. Greek man. Rada! We have to do Rada. What's up? Alright, let's see, where are we gonna go now? Where's the passport? Let's see. So we haven't done any of the Roman ones yet. So let's see if we can find one of the ones with the helmet. They may be in the Cyrene area, which will be in the upper left of the map. There's, yeah. Yep. I'm sure there probably are. Maybe not the Nile itself. The major regions. Bringer of life, the River Nile. Learn about the River Nile and its importance to the development of ancient Egypt civilization. Let's do that one. Good choice, sir.
Wow!
Region Inab Hedjet Nome. Learn about the River Nile and its importance to the development of ancient Egypt civilization. 9 stations, 9 minutes.
Welcome to Bringer of Life, the River Nile.
We're on a boat, guys. We're on a boat. I forget what they call these boats.
The ancient Egyptians called the dark fertile soil of the Nile the Black Lands, and the surrounding desert was referred to as the Red Lands. The dramatic difference of productive land opposed to barren desert had a deep influence on cultural ideology, mythology, and religion.
Whoopie fucking do.
But stay on target. Stay on target.
The Nile determined much of Egyptian civilization. For example, the seasonal cycle of the Nile was so consistent that ancient Egyptians created their calendar around it.
Didn't know that.
The flood season, or Akhet, was when the departing floodwaters left arable soil for crops. It was followed by the growing and harvesting seasons, known as Peret and Shemu. These regular seasons, along with abundant wildlife and rich soil, meant that Egypt's denizens were able to nourish themselves and ensure their country's strength in trade.
So I guess that does remind me that we heard a reference from someone talking about they lived for so many floods or something like that. So I guess that lends credence to what she just said about that determining the seasons. So consistent.
The River Nile, flowing from the south to the north, neatly traversed through both Upper and Lower Egypt. All of Egypt's major cities were built along this narrow ribbon of life. Protected by mountain ranges and deserts which acted as natural barriers to enemies, and sustained by the Nile's plants and wildlife, Egyptian civilization enjoyed economic and cultural prosperity for over 4,000 years.
4,000 years. That's a long ass time, man. All of their major cities were built along the narrow ribbon of life.
Both ancient Egyptians and ancient Greeks referred to the Nile as the river in their respective languages. Stretching a distance of over 6,700 kilometers, the Nile is one of the longest rivers in the world. It flows south to north, spanning 11 countries.
11 countries.
The River Nile originates in the region of the Great Subequatorial Lakes, including one of the largest in the world, Lake Victoria near Tanzania.
Isn't only the Amazon River the longest river in the world? Let that trireme go by. I knew it was first or second, but I would have thought that if it were the longest, she would have said it was the longest. But when she said one of, it kind of made me doubt it a little bit.
The river flows through African equatorial forests, swamps, volcanic lands, steppes, and deserts, splitting apart for a while and picking up various sediments from each region and carrying them all the way to Egypt. Its main artery, known as the White Nile, rejoins with the Blue Nile in Khartoum. This is where it weaves through rich deposits of silt and nutrients, carrying them along in its wake.
Yes, sir. Whatever you say. Yeah, I guess you can't do the turbo speed in the boats in this. Only if you hold the right trigger down. Get up extra speed.
The Nile crosses 6 cataracts from the south to the north, creating natural obstacles between the various sections of the river. The cataracts are long zones of about 100 kilometers, where the bubbling and rapidly swirling waters advance tumultuously amid enormous heaps of rocks and benches of hard stone.
Guy's got a whole grocery store in those baskets.
It is after crossing Nubia
This is pretty
and
cool
the first
stuff.
cataract that the river officially returns to Egypt in Aswan. There are still 1,000 kilometers before it reaches Cairo and the Delta, bringing life to those living on its shores before it eventually empties into the Mediterranean Sea.
Did I get a kickback for that? Commission? And they could have easily done this same type of thing with pretty much all of the previous games, right? You know, Jerusalem, Italy, Paris, London. You know, they're going to be, since from what I've seen so far, this has been so well received, now it's going to be almost like they're going to have to do it for all the games going forward, or people are going to complain. Why did you guys take out the Discovery Tour, man?
Ancient Egyptian irrigation and water use was centered around the Nile. However, they also had access to streams and rivers, as well as several large lakes. The Delta, situated at the north end of the Nile, also known as Lower Egypt, is a large irrigated area where the river splits into several tributaries.
And napalm. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory. Charlie Don't Surf. Man, it has been so long since I've seen that movie. I need to watch that again. Looks like the last stop on this one.
The Delta had several major brackish coastal lakes, bodies of water separated from the sea by thin strips of land. A mix of deep to shallow waters, salt swamps, and sand plains, these lakes were refuge to a wealth of species, as well as water and land plants. The occasional bandit could also be found sheltering within the denser reeds, waiting for the unwary traveler.
I have not seen Deer Hunter, believe it or not. I've seen Platoon, I've seen Full Metal Jacket. I love Full Metal Jacket. Is it? I've heard there's like a lot of nudity in it too. A lot of nakedness. Alright, let's go. We'll switch to Bayek, and I think we'll stay with Bayek for the rest. Since he's the main dude. Alright, let's see. We were going to do one for the Romans. Just like Alien King suggested, if you guys can think of anything in particular you want to see, if they have a tour for it, just, you know, please speak up. I don't mind jumping around. As you can see, it's pretty easy to go to them. You can go directly to them. Roman forts, 4 stations, 3 minutes. That's a short one. We'll do that. The Lighthouse of Alexandria. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Welcome to Roman forts. The size of a Roman military camp, known as a castrum, varied significantly depending on how many soldiers it needed to accommodate.
Well, duh.
However, they all shared common characteristics in design and construction, such as this fort before you, located in Cape Chersonesos.
A gate, some towers, some places for people to sleep.
Rectangular in shape, the forts were heavily fortified by ramparts and a ditch system. The walls were reinforced with parapets, essentially an extension at the roofline which allowed a protective barrier for patrolling soldiers. Depending on the availability of materials, some forts were built with stone, timbers, stacked turf, and particularly in the eastern part of the empire, baked brick.
Yeah, I bet this guy really wants to hurt me right now. You can't hurt me. We're in discovery mode. Discovery tour mode.
Access doors on all 4 sides were each flanked by guard towers. The commanding officer was positioned in the middle of the camp, giving him a clear view of the troops and the main gate. Along with sleeping barracks for the soldiers, the fort also had a granary that was expected to hold rations for a year or longer.
Wow, a year or longer.
To ensure the health of the soldiers, every camp was equipped with medical staff and a hospital. A clean water supply with conduits for a bathhouse and latrines was included in the construction of every fort.
Is there anything? Let's see if there's anything like really high somewhere. Katara Depression. Osiris, the first mummy. Understand the significance of the mummies. for ancient Egyptians. Only if Rachel Wise gets to come with us.
Welcome to Osiris, the first mummy.
Yeah. We want Rachel. We want Rachel. Oh, really? We got Brandon instead? Or Brendan, sorry. I am disappointed.
The oldest mummies recovered date from the Old Kingdom, though Egyptologists believe that mummification was in use much earlier than that. At first, the body was mummified through environmental desiccation, by leveraging the dryness of the environment and the heat of the climate. Early experimentations in mummification were conducted with the use of resin made from tree sap. Strips of linen were only used on some superficial parts of the epidermis of the hands or jaw.
It's that same picture we saw earlier. Different context this time, of course.
Ideologically, the will to preserve the body is not explained in any way until 3600 BCE. This is when the Egyptian belief that the body housed the soul was finally documented for modern Egyptologists to eventually decipher. It was not until the arrival of the myth of Osiris in the Egyptian religion around the 5th dynasty that mummification was thoroughly conceptualized. The practice was thereafter grounded in both a mythological and ideological point of view.
Common symbols.
Well, that's great. That's just fucking great, man.
Osiris was mainly known as the god of the dead and the god of resurrection. The most well-known Genesis myth concerning Osiris is that of his dismemberment.
Oh.
It is Plutarch who gives the most simplified and complete summary of the story. Within Egyptian mythology, Osiris represented the first king to rule Egypt. Jealous of his power, his brother Seth attempted to usurp his throne. After several unsuccessful attempts, Seth succeeded in killing his brother by dismembering him and scattering the pieces of his body all over Egypt. Isis, the great of magic, traveled all over Egypt in search of the pieces of her husband's body. After a long search, she recovered all the pieces save for his manhood, as it was
Eaten by a fish. Ah. Oh, did you have to put that in there? I mean, come on. Every guy is squirming right now.
Isis then reassembled the body of her husband by binding it together with strips of linen. Aided by her sister Nephthys, another powerful magician, they gave Osiris the breath of life. This not only brought him back from the dead, but also allowed him to recover his virility long enough to impregnate Isis, thus ensuring his succession.
How could he do that without his manhood?
Dying. Thus Horus was born.
The fish ate it.
The ritual used to bring Osiris back to life essentially depicts how he became the first mummy. It is why, on the sarcophagi of kings, we often find Isit and Nephthys represented as the magicians who restore life to the deceased.
Okay. Is there anything out in the desert anywhere? Some more pyramids. I always saw this one. This might be the closest one. Learn about the Qatar Depression in northwestern Egypt. 2 minutes, 2 stations. Well, that'll be a fast one, right?
Welcome to the Qatar Depression. The Qatar Depression is located in the northwest part of Egypt. Reaching 18,000 square kilometers, the basin is 133 meters below sea level and covered with salt. It is the second lowest point in Africa, after the Afar Depression. The climate is very arid, with average temperatures reaching 36 degrees Celsius. The famous Siwa Oasis is located on the protected southwestern region. Today, the Qatar Depression is utilized for oil exploration.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. Didn't know that either. Lots of learning today. Don't sneeze or you might miss that one. That one was a short one for sure. Just 2 stops. Mummies, mummies, mummies. Building ancient Egypt, agriculture and seasons. Domesticated animals of ancient Egypt. Beer and bread. Let's do it. Oh, can we not travel to that one? Oh, we can. Nice. Huge granite stone. Oh, really? Napoleon's sarcophagus ended up staying on the shore. Learn about the production steps of brewing beer and bread making and their importance in ancient Egyptians' lives. 10 stops, 6 minutes.
Welcome to Bread and Beer. While the Mesopotamians invented beer, including using a straw to avoid the sediments and herbs,
we can do
ancient Egyptians perfected the brewing method. Egyptian beer's quality was determined by alcohol strength, color, and flavor. During the Pharaonic era, beer was the most commonly used and important alcoholic beverage. The state and temples used it, along with bread, as payment to workers, and it was included on the lists of food offerings to the gods and the deceased.
Drinking beer with a straw. That would be blasphemy today, right? Drink anything with a straw. Unless you had dental work done and your jaws wired shut.
Beer was the popular drink of ceremonies and festivals. The Festival of Drunkenness was even
Festival
dedicated
of
to it.
Drunkenness.
Considered to be quite nutritional, beer was also significant in the day-to-day lives of ancient Egyptians. Egyptian adults and children consumed beer with all of their meals, and medical texts include hundreds of remedies that contain beer. It remained the most popular alcoholic beverage until the Roman era.
Women at a banquet.
Recipes for beer varied over time and depended on the quality of the materials. Bakers and brewers typically worked alongside one another at the same workshop or house. Many families often produced the quantity appropriate to their own consumption, with better quality beers produced for festivals and other special occasions.
Makes sense.
The most basic recipe used malted cereal as the main ingredient. Fruits such as dates were added along with honey and spices. Once baked, bread would be crumbled into the brew to start the fermentation process. Adding grain enzymes would break down the starches, turning them into sugar and creating a thick mash.
It's like a baseball bat.
Once ready, the bread and grain mixture was compressed and then strained through a sieve with water into the mix of malt beer. Once fermented, the beer mash was transferred to large containers and again compressed by foot or with pestles.
By foot. It's like stomping grapes, right?
Once smooth, the beer was stored in pottery jars and sealed with a clay stopper. It probably couldn't be kept for long and likely had a thick, pasty appearance and texture. Very little was wasted. Leftover grains were reused to make sourdough bread or combined
sourdough
with
bread,
the next
yummy.
batch of beer.
Love sourdough bread.
While there are many ancient accounts for making bread, most of the knowledge known about ancient Egyptian brewing comes from an account by the alchemist Zosimus over 300 years after Cleopatra's reign. More recently, Dr. Delwyn Samuel, an archaeobotanist, has proposed alternate antique techniques to brew beer. However, experts are unable to replicate an authentic beer since not all of the techniques and ingredients used by ancient Egyptians are known yet.
Interesting.
Food was prepared on the floor until the Middle Kingdom, when cooking benches were introduced. The introduction of durum wheat improved bread quality, meaning that the upper and middle classes ate better. The poor, however, still made do with a diet consisting of a gruel made of vegetables,
Gruel.
softened bread, or barley.
I guess it's just some kind of... Oh, that was bread.
While there are many ancient accounts for making bread, most of the knowledge known about ancient Egyptian brewing
But the very
comes
top.
from an account by the alchemist Zosimus over 300 years after Cleopatra's reign.
Looked like a foot.
More recently, Dr. Delwyn Samuel, an archaeobotanist, has proposed alternate antique techniques to brew beer. However, experts are unable to replicate an authentic beer since not all of the techniques and ingredients used by ancient Egyptians are known yet. Dough was kneaded by hand or foot, and when sufficiently blended, additional items were added, such as fruits, nuts, honey, and spices. To leaven the bread, they added sourdough or leaven from beer brewing. Ovens were circular or beehive-shaped and made with clay or brick. If there was no oven at all, a bread maker used the hot sand to bake flatbread, a technique still in use by some Berbers today.
That's pretty hot sand. If it's hot enough to bake bread. Even if it is flatbread.
Ancient Egyptians always had to fight off the omnipresent sand particles that were blown towards them. Despite their best efforts, sand regularly made its way into their food. Additionally, particles from the grain-grinding stone tools and ovens they used also contributed to attrition and prematurely worn teeth.
That's kind of to be expected,
The team
right?
tried to portray this through toothache animations and commoners sweeping sand off.
Big Q-tips. All right, let's look at the animals. Daily life, mummies, amulets, agricultures, beer and bread. Where were they? Domesticated animals. Four stations, 3 minutes. Greek drachma. Here's the kitties. Kitties all over the place.
Welcome to Domesticated Animals of Ancient Egypt.
Bayek, I know, will pet the animals because he's done it before. Not this time, though. Oh, well.
Agriculture and domesticated livestock were introduced 6,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found traces of cattle, donkeys, pigs, and dogs. Dromedary are thought to have been introduced during the Persian invasion.
Dromedary? What the hell is that? King Khufu's cattle. Kind of like a camel.
Pets were deeply cherished.
Look,
in
it's an
ancient
ass!
Egypt. Many illustrations of children often
Look like
include
an
a
ass
pet in
anyway.
the depiction.
Cat figurine. Sorry. Chickens.
One of ancient Egypt's most iconic animals, the cat, wasn't adopted into their daily life until the Middle Kingdom. Since they were so highly capable of killing snakes and rodents, cats were present throughout every period. However, they only became pets sometime during the Middle Kingdom. Prince Thutmose, son of Amenhotep III, had his cat Ta-Mew laid to rest in its own sarcophagi.
Tom Mew. I have to name my next cat after Tom Mew.
The earliest reference to dogs dates back to 5000 BCE. They were popular pets as they helped hunters and protected herds. They were closely linked to Anubis, the jackal-headed god. Baboons, monkeys, and even falcons were tamed as pets. Each was mummified
Eagles.
and buried with as much ceremony as any family member.
Alright, let's see. Interesting that there's one over here. Pyramids of the Middle Kingdom, all the way over here. Philadelphia. Workers and transport. Oil. The Fayoum. Deserts of Egypt. There you go. 94% of Egypt is covered in desert.
Welcome to Deserts of Egypt. Reaching out on either side of the lush Nile are the harsh, arid Western Desert and the mountainous Eastern Desert. They cover nearly 94% of Egypt. Each of these parent deserts have their own microclimate and contain several smaller deserts with a distinctive fauna and flora. Whale
Bones.
fossils were discovered within the depths of the Sahara. Known as the Valley of the Whales, this location is evidence of the seas which once covered the area.
What is that in the back? Is that a big ass rock?
The White Desert in the northeast of the Sahara owes its name to its white limestone soil, contrasting with the yellow sand. The wind has eroded the rocks of the White Desert into stone mushrooms, the most famous of which is referred to as the Finger of God.
The Finger of God. Ooh. It's one of the best ones. Exemplary me. I would say it's knocking on the door of being the best one as far as I'm concerned. Assassin's Creed 2 is also outstanding. Black Flag is outstanding. Although Black Flag is more of a pirate game than an Assassin's game. The naval combat in Black Flag is awesome. It's a lot of fun. But you can do yourself some good by getting this one if you were looking to start playing some of the Assassin's Creed games. Sounded like somebody was following me.
The Great Sand Sea is a large unbroken desert that reaches out through western Egypt and eastern Libya. It is home to a unique geological formation known as Libyan silica glass. The pale yellowish-green material ranges from pebble-sized fragments to glass rocks the size of rough boulders.
Great Sand Sea. There's another short one. All right. Let's see. Oh, they do have a timeline here as well, which is kind of neat. It's not very in-depth, but if you didn't know what the BCE references were and the CE references, there they are right there. Yeah, that's the entire list. Right there. Okay. Let's see. Egypt pyramids, Alexandria. Roman aqueducts. There we go. Learn about aqueducts and water management. Maybe we'll do that crucifixion one after this.
Welcome to Roman aqueducts.
Just die, will ya?
No dying tonight, sir.
Wow!
Yes. Yes, I am. Wow, this is a long secondary currency, dry ice. Did I like completely walk by the first one? Wow. Could I miss it?
You're gonna die for that.
This can't be happening, man. This ain't happening.
Thank you. I work very hard on my sound effects. I really do.
Water management was taken seriously by the Romans. Cyrenaica benefited greatly from Roman administration with the construction of aqueducts and canals. The source of water varied depending on the location. Many aqueducts were built at the foot of the mountains, offering greater flow from the melting snow.
Between you and us, that thing that killed you is a total dick. Please disregard this message if you committed suicide.
That's from Borderlands 2. There's about a handful or so, somewhere between maybe 5 and 10, that I couldn't fit.
The ability to transport water over a greater distance increased agricultural production. Some aqueducts were reported to be over 7 kilometers in length.
7 kilometers?
Where the Greeks
Yikes.
of Libya originally focused mainly on olive trees and figs, which required less water, the advent of Roman aqueducts allowed for a far greater crop diversity. Every farm's water use was carefully scheduled.
Almost looked like a fort.
You get a bullet, and you get a bullet! Everybody gets a bullet!
The engineering methods used to create aqueducts were constantly reviewed, with a clear focus on exploiting the local environment. Materials, water usage, cleaning regulations, and a deep understanding of how to exploit gravity itself were all important concerns. Several fortresses were built to protect the aqueducts, basins, and cisterns.
The tools. There's actually a quest that involves some of the tools in this very spot, actually. And one of the forts that they were talking about is right over there. Where is it? Yep, off in the distance over there.
Additional water was collected with wells and cisterns, but aqueducts were the main supply of fresh water. The water was distributed based on the collective needs of the city before the private needs of an individual.
Wow. Collective needs of the city before the private needs of an individual. Roman aqueduct of Segovia, or Segovia.
Almost all aqueducts ended in a fountain where the water circulated to clean the streets and supply bathhouses and latrines, thus improving the cleanliness of Cyrenaica's cities.
Who's next?
It's not the heat that gets you. Well, it might, if the miles and miles of endless barren desert without water don't first.
Crucifixion. No. It's on. Why are you telling me to connect the controller? It's on. Really? Oh my god, we've been hacked. Let me disconnect the battery. Put it back in. See if that fixes it. There we go. Learn about crucifixion, the most severe form of Roman capital punishment. 4 station, 3 minutes. Oh, this ought to be interesting.
Crucifixion. In terms of the severity of Roman justice, crucifixion was at the top of the list of corporal punishment, followed by death by fire and decapitation.
Man.
The upper class considered crucifixion unworthy of their position. Those lucky enough to have Roman
Thanks, Tippy. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you on Friday, hopefully.
Treatment.
Shadow of the Colossus starts on Friday.
Easily accessible, crucifixions were popular entertainment among the citizenry. Unlike throwing victims to wild animals, which required an arena, crucifixions did not require any particular setting.
Nail them to a cross. Popular entertainment with among the citizenry.
Those subjected to crucifixion were almost always slaves, traders, and lower-class citizens. Roman deserters were crucified because the betrayal of the soldiers was perceived as endangering the lives of Roman citizens. In 71 BCE, a major slave uprising in Italia was repressed by the Roman army. This resulted in the crucifixion of 6,000 men, including their leader, a slave and former gladiator known as Spartacus.
Unbelievable. Crap. Alright, let's look at the map and see what we got. Ancient Egyptian medicine, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, 14 stations in 7 minutes. Geography and importance of the oasis. We'll do these two. Medicine and more on the hieroglyphs. We did one on hieroglyphs earlier for those of you that might have just joined us. How they were deciphered by Champollion. Balance of science and magic. That was ancient Egyptian medicine.
Welcome to Ancient Egyptian Medicine. Evidence of advanced medical procedures have been found on mummies, and ancient Egyptians left detailed medical writings from diagnosis to follow-up treatment. One of the oldest known surgical studies is the Edwin Smith Papyrus. It's one of the first documents in history that notes an association between the integrity of the brain and cognitive functions, including cases of ocular complications and paralysis following head trauma. Vinegar-treated marble stone from Memphis was used as an anesthetic.
Interesting. Vinegar.
Another similar document, the Ebers Medical Papyrus, is over 20 meters long and 30 centimeters wide. It details treatments of 48 surgical cases and contains 877 paragraphs describing various diseases. Alongside accurate and factual scientific approaches, the papyrus has more than 700 magic formulas and incantations to ward off demons and disease. This demonstrates how ancient Egyptians believed in a harmonious balance between religion and science.
"20 meters long and 30 centimeters wide. 2.5 centimeters per inch. 10 inches wide and about 60 feet long. That's pretty big.
Remedies were considered as medicine and carried by doctors and priests. Village doctors often had another job alongside their medical duties and the preparation of medicines. A cure for blindness was made of fermented honey, ochre, and coal. The science behind it was that honey functioned as an antiseptic and antibacterial, while ochre would reduce the swelling. All of their knowledge did not always suffice. Ramses II died of an infection caused by an abscessed tooth.
Ointment box. We'll let Bayek get a little bit of exercise. Needs to get his cardio in for the day. Music is always good in these games too.
If you have
14
some time,
stations.
check out Alexandria. It's one of the greatest cities in antiquity.
Welcome to Ancient Egyptian Hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphics were used as sacred writing, appearing on monuments, statues, and sacred papyrus texts. The earliest symbols that resemble hieroglyphs were on pottery dating back to 4000 BCE. This stylized form of signs and drawings was the only writing used from its ancient origins to the end of pharaonic history. Ancient Egyptians referred to hieroglyphs as the writing of the gods.
Cup inscribed with the name of the Horus Semerket.
Considered a difficult language, it was intended for pharaohs, nobility, and priests, and meant to be used in ceremonies, within tombs, and for government records. Since few Egyptians were able to read the ancient hieroglyphs, the mythological aura around the language was persistent, even in their own culture. The structure of hieroglyphs offers insight into Egyptian culture, not just in what the translations say, but in the structure of the symbols themselves. They were found on tomb walls, on sarcophagi, on statues, and on pottery, and were meticulously recorded in countless ancient papyri.
Papyri?
In many temples, priests would perform rituals and daily offerings. These were accompanied by hieroglyphs used as spells. In tomb paintings, the hieroglyphs are represented with formulas to recite. These spoken words were meant to be spells which would allow the deceased to benefit from the offerings for all eternity. Spells and offerings were also written for the living, to enhance medicines and cure illnesses. The most famous of ancient Egyptian documents is the Book of the Dead. Written in hieroglyphs and hieratic texts, it depicts important spells and rituals. These spells were intended to ensure a smooth transition from life to death and allow the deceased to safely navigate the perils of the afterlife.
Navigate the perils.
Even after it was deciphered, the reading of hieroglyphs remained difficult at times due to the many directions in which they can be read. Depending on the orientation of the signs, hieroglyphs can be read left to right, right to left, horizontally or vertically, though never bottom to top.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that, I guess.
A clue on which way to read is to first notice which direction the figurative signs are facing. If a pictogram is looking to the right, then the reader is meant to start from the right and read towards the figure. Column text on a papyrus begins from the right, then goes top to bottom for each column.
Funerary stele of Nined Kamau. Some of those names, man.
Text written on tomb walls resembles the structure of a page from a comic book. The text can be placed in front, behind, or above the character, and its symbols look in the same direction as the character. Another clue is that the name of a god or hieroglyphs meaning gods or kings are always written before the descriptive text. Compared to alphabetical languages, Egyptian hieroglyphs have more symbols. Confronted with the absence of vowels, the Egyptians invented a category of signs. When placed at the end of words, these signs help inform its meaning. For instance, a drawing of a lion will refer to a lion and also relate to the abstract concept of a lion as something dangerous or powerful. Middle Egyptian hieroglyphs contained a little more than 700 signs.
700.
By the end of the Greco-Roman period, there were 10,000 signs.
Damn.
Egyptologist Sir Alan Gardner created a list classifying common hieroglyphic signs and their variants.
Damn. Part 1, Hieroglyphics Chart, Part 1.
Ancient Egyptian languages have many similarities with Asian and African languages. They have evolved in similar ways to the various forms of written Egyptian. These languages belong to the Hamito-Semitic group. There were 5 clear evolutions in the Egyptian language, each with their own distinctive structure. These languages are known as Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. Coptic is the only living language that allows linguists to define the vowel structure and to distinguish different dialects.
Life of San Andreas, Sahidic parchment.
While hieroglyphs and hieratic script give us an idea as to how the ancient Egyptian language was structured and written, the way it was spoken is still up for debate. The team opted for English as the spoken language, with the characters using ancient Egyptian and Greek words and accents. The language that is spoken in the background by the crowds is largely based on Sir Alan Gardner's Egyptian grammar. To help resurrect a dead language, we consulted Egyptologists and dialogue coaches to establish our target sound and cast actors with Arabic, Hebraic, and African backgrounds to bring the game to life.
Book of the Dead of Aset Tuaret.
After Alexander the Great's arrival in Egypt and the establishment of his reign, Greek became the language used by the governing bodies. The inability to read hieroglyphs caused resentment among the Greek population. It's from this tension that the Rosetta Stone was created.
Good. This is interesting stuff. This is very cool. This is very cool. Rosetta Stone, again, we saw that earlier in the first tour, having to do with the hieroglyphs.
The spread of Christianity ended pharaonic culture and resulted in the destruction of its pagan monuments. This also marked the end of hieroglyphic writing and understanding.
Alright, let's see, we got about half an hour, a little less than half an hour left. I can't believe it's already been 2.5 hours. Let's go back up this way, up to Cyrene. See if there's anything up here. The Acropolis. Important monuments of Cyrene. The founding of Cyrene. The Temple of Zeus in Cyrene. We might do that one next. The Agora and Thermal Baths. The Gladiator Arena. Major exports. So let's do this one. Yeah, we'll do this one first, and then we'll do the arena after that. That's the arena that we were in last night, by the way. What was it? 13 rounds. Missed the top of the leaderboards by 1 damn point. 1 point. Five stations, 2 minutes.
Welcome to the Temple of Zeus in Cyrene.
Oh, Cyrene. Okay. I could swear that in-game somebody was calling it Cyrene.
Facing east towards the rising sun stands the temple dedicated to the cult of Zeus. It was built sometime in the 5th century BCE. 70 meters long with 46 Doric-style columns, the imposing structure was the largest Greek temple erected in Africa. It was only slightly larger than the Parthenon and the Temple of Zeus in Olympia.
Parthenon. Nice. Libya. Giovanni Baccario. Baccardi. Rum?
The exterior was designed with the decorative elements common to Doric architecture. The dimensions of the columns were different, giving visitors an impression of uniqueness when viewing each facade. After the temple was destroyed during the Jewish rebellion, Emperor Hadrian had it reconstructed. He chose not to rebuild the outer portico, but did restore the new Corinthian columns in marble.
Leather.
The temple was later completed under Marcus Aurelius.
Corinthian capital.
In the time of Augustus, a faithful but smaller imitation of the Olympian Zeus was used to be worshipped. Hadrian then installed a new 12-meter-high statue matching the Zeus in Olympia. It was made of chiseled marble with the head, arms, and feet carved in the round. Archaeologists confirmed that there was a monumental statue of Zeus in this temple, though experts remain divided on whether it was one of Zeus or one more specific to the cult of Zeus Ammon. The team elected to place a statue of Zeus Ammon in this location, knowing that Cyrene was central to the spread of this cult in the Greek Mediterranean area.
Look at this cat. Man, that guy is like, it's on PCP or something. Look at him go! Alright, let's see, let's mark. Let's see, the gladiator arena is, nope, that's the baths. There we go, look at that one.
Take your time. I'll wait. It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
Learn about the gladiator arenas of the Roman Republic. 5 stations, 3 minutes.
Welcome to the Gladiator Arena.
And as part of the tour, you get to participate. Here's your sword.
While gladiators would not perform in Cyrene until later in the Roman era, the team decided to include a gladiatorial arena for 2 reasons. First, they believed it was important to portray this aspect of Roman life. And second, they felt it would add interesting gameplay possibilities.
lamp. Gladiators fighting.
The first gladiators to enter the arena were prisoners of war. It was a spectacle of violent clashes between men and against wild beasts that lasted nearly 1,000 years.
Ow, 1,000 years.
Eventually, volunteers began to enter the ring. For status and money, many of the more skilled combatants increased the quality of the entertainment. Thus, the profession of gladiator came to be.
Oh man, a body slam over there.
Bound by contract to the master of the gladiators, the fighters were fed, trained, and guarded in barracks.
Figurines of gladiator Hellenistic period.
Gladiators were separated into heavy and light armored fighters, each with their own set of specific armor and weapons. Organizers often had two audience-favored factions face each other in combat. The events were highly organized. Fights were held with a background of music and supervised by a referee. Death, either in the course of combat or by decision, was not always the only way out for the loser. Several were released due to their performance and gained great notoriety as celebrities.
Artists. Alright, let's see what we got here. Kind of surprised that there's not many more along the shore. I don't know why. Islands of Pharaohs, education. Where's one on the library? There's got to be one in the library here somewhere. Greek pharaohs. The hippodrome. Yeah, let's do the hippodrome. Do the hippodrome and the wine. And then we'll see how much time we have left after those. We got about 10 to 15 minutes left. We'd be able to get those two done at least. You do get to go in here as well.
Welcome
Chariot
to
races.
the Hippodrome of Alexandria. The main hippodrome of the city was called the Legeon, in honor of Lagos, the ancestor of the Ptolemies. Alexandrians were great lovers of horse racing. They were fascinated by the rivalry of these races. The agon, as it was said at that time, that every competition brought. It was a struggle for glory. The most important chariot race was the Tethrapon. Using 4 horses with the quickest harness to the front right, the charioteer would race for 12 laps, with sharp turns at either end of the hippodrome. The victors were crowned with garlands of olive and received prize money, but the most sought-after reward was to be acclaimed by the works of poets, such as Callimachus and Pindar.
Ήκουσον τούτο. Δευτέραν 13.
Ye hymns that rule the lyre, what god, what hero, aye, and what man shall we loudly praise? Verily Zeus is the lord of Pisa, and Heracles established the Olympic festival, while Theron must be proclaimed by reason of his victorious chariot with its 4 horses. Theron, who is just in his regard for guests, and who is the bulwark of Akragas, the choicest flower of an auspicious line of sires, whose city towers on high, bringing wealth and glory to crown their native merits.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely
It's
unique.
not the heat that gets you. Well, it might, if the miles and miles of endless barren desert without water don't first.
Yeah, the female narrator said that same thing earlier. Learn about the origin, production, and storage of wine in ancient Egypt. 4 stations.
Welcome to Wine in Ancient Egypt. When the god Horus lost his eye in a war with Seth, the ancient Egyptians believed the eye turned into a vine, and the vine's tears became wine. Early texts, dating back to 3150 BCE, contain the hieroglyph for vine. Regarded as extremely valuable, wine was highly sought after by the elite. It was also an essential part of many religious ceremonies. A millennia-old tradition. Grape cultivation and wine production was regimented in the way typical of ancient Egyptian bureaucracy. Egyptians kept careful records of winemakers,
How are those grapes not
which
falling
they
out of that
clearly
basket?
identified on labels. Every landowner with a modicum of self-respect usually kept a vineyard. This held particularly true in the regions of the Fayoum and the Nile Delta. Documentation shows that only certain craftsfolk were allowed to provide the containers required to store and transport wine. That and rigorous quality control checks established for every step of wine production shows that ancient Egyptians knew that the quality and longevity of wine could easily be affected by any number of variables, which they paid careful attention to.
Wine jar. Looks like some kind of barracks. Or some of the barracks look like this.
Egyptians had different kinds of wines, most of which ranged in quality from good to very good. The sweet shadé, to which honey had been added. The soft nejem, obtained by drying the grapes in the sun. The ma, reserved for religious ceremonies. And finally there was the peyor, the mediocre rated wine, resulting from the second pressing of grapes and reserved for a less discerning palate.
For the cheap drunks. Wine and papyrus for the treasures of Amun, tomb of Rickmeyer. Alright, let's see. Do one more. We never did see one for the library, did we? Ah, Cleopatra. There we go. 9 minutes. This will be a good way to end it. Learn about Cleopatra, the last of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. Might as well, right? It's about her. Might as well be her. Because we can.
Welcome to Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra VII Theophilopator ascended the throne in 51 BCE at the age of 18. Though her early attempts to maintain power were often challenged, she eventually prevailed and became the sole ruler of Egypt. According to Plutarch, she was the only Ptolemaic pharaoh to speak the Egyptian language. Her intelligence, coupled with a good education and a great political mind, allowed her to make the alliances necessary to maintain the independence of Egypt while Rome was becoming a Mediterranean empire. It is important to understand that Cleopatra's knowledge of Egyptian language and keen understanding of the culture allowed her to make powerful ideological reference that resonated with ancient Egyptians. By associating herself with the goddess Isis, the divine mother, great of magic, and repository of divine essence, Cleopatra firmly established herself as the protector of the two lands and legitimized her place on the throne.
The Millennium Falcon. Probably Cleopatra? Interesting.
Upon his death in 51 BCE, Ptolemy XII Aulus bequeathed his kingdom to his daughter and eldest son, Cleopatra VII and Ptolemy XIII. As was custom, the siblings were married. The new pharaoh was 10 years old, his sister wife 17. The early years of their reign were not easy. Between 50 and 48 BCE, droughts and floods aggravated Egypt's problems. General Achilles and the royal advisor Pothinos kept intervening in the young ruler's political decisions, and eventually colluded to turn Ptolemy XIII against Cleopatra. By 48 BCE, Cleopatra was in exile.
You're talking about the fact that they were married as brother and sister?
During Cleopatra's exile, the Roman Empire was not without its own internal conflict. Caesar and Pompey were at war with one another, and after his defeat in 48 BCE, Pompey fled to Alexandria in the hope of finding refuge. This turned out to be an unwise decision. Listening to his advisors, Ptolemy XIII elected to have Pompey assassinated,
Probably.
his head kept as a gift, in the hopes of acquiring
Is
Caesar's
this dude taking
favor.
a nap or what?
This gambit backfired. Instead of earning approval, the murder of a Roman greatly angered Caesar.
Χαίρετε τα του οίκου σου. Χάριν
Cleopatra, aware of Caesar's anger against Ptolemy for the murder of Pompey, decided to take advantage of the situation. She returned to Egypt in secret, hoping to establish an alliance with one of the most powerful men of the time. Outside of the legend, where she had herself smuggled into his quarters in a carpet, what exactly happened during that fateful meeting
You
remains
actually
a
get to
mystery.
do that as part
However,
of the game,
Caesar
the whole
seemed to see a
carpet
better
thing.
ruler for Egypt in Cleopatra than in her young and too easily influenced brother. Invoking Ptolemy XII's will, Caesar attempted to mediate peace between the siblings.
Τι απολαμβάνεις. Τα πάντα ρέει και ουδένα κινητωμένη. Αλλαγές πολλές συμβαίνουσαν και Δίος βοηθεί.
Ptolemy XIII was enraged by the turn of events, and his advisors were none too happy to see Cleopatra return. Urged
that
on by
supposed to be
General
her, I
Achilles
guess?
and Pothinos, the
Oh my
young
God, there
pharaoh
are two of
plotted
me.
against Caesar and Cleopatra, resulting in the siege of Alexandria in 47 BCE.
Paradox.
It was in March 47 BCE that Caesar defeated Ptolemy XIII's forces. The young pharaoh drowned in the Nile after having fled the battlefield. With her opponents dead or powerless, Cleopatra married her other much younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, and finally claimed the throne of Egypt for good. The end of the Alexandrian War also cemented the romantic and political alliance between Cleopatra and Caesar.
Hey, bro, come over here. I got a little something for you.
In June of 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, whom she called Caesarion. Caesar did not accept the boy as his heir,
Caesarean
choosing
section?
instead his nephew
Maybe?
Octavian. Nonetheless, on his return to Rome, Caesar invited the queen and her brother
Smell this
husband to
scorpion.
stay in the city. Her presence still drew much disapproval from the Senate. Always a strategist, Caesar left 4 legions in Egypt, and a man he trusted to direct Egyptian affairs, giving him control of the wheat supplies essential to Rome. Cleopatra and her entourage remained in Rome until March 44 BCE, when Caesar was murdered.
Τι απολαμβάνεις.
Caesar's most faithful ally, Mark Antony, often visited the Queen of Egypt during his stay in Rome. Unlike most, he recognized the legitimacy of Caesarion, the natural son of Caesar. Antony knew he would need the riches of Egypt in order to fight Octavian and claim the Roman Empire. Cleopatra, in return, saw a powerful ally. In the winter of 41 BCE, she arranged a sumptuous tour of Egypt by boat to show Antony the wealth of her country and the power she held as its ruler. A romantic and political relationship followed. The Roman Senate was once again most displeased. To calm spirits in Rome, Antony married Octavia, sister of Octavian.
Dude getting a stretch.
Despite his marriage to Octavia, Antony remained Cleopatra's lover, and she gave birth to their children. Cleopatra increased her kingdom's territory and started a political propaganda alongside her lover in Egypt and beyond. She hoped to create a Ptolemaic federal empire with Alexandria at its center. Antony eventually repudiated his Roman wife for the Egyptian queen, much to the dismay of the Roman elite. However, while Mark Antony focused on Egypt, Octavian carefully gained military and political ascendancy over him in Rome.
Tetradrachm. Queen Cleopatra and Mark Antony.
Octavian managed his own propaganda campaign and succeeded. The Roman people hated Mark Antony and Cleopatra. To avoid the censure still inherent in attacking a fellow Roman, Octavian simply declared war against Egypt. Rome's power still reigned supreme. The powerful Egyptian fleet, led by Cleopatra as well as Mark Antony's forces, were defeated in 31 BCE in Actium. Octavian arrived in Egypt in 30 BCE to formalize his victory.
Probably. It's another probably. We've seen a couple of those.
The following events remain difficult to confirm due to the many versions and legends around them. It is believed that after hearing a rumor about Cleopatra's suicide, Mark Antony committed suicide himself. He was brought to the queen as he slowly passed away. Knowing that Octavian would have her chained and paraded through Rome in defeat, Cleopatra planned her own suicide. She most likely killed herself with arsenic, though admittedly, the version where she uses an asp to deliver a fatal bite may be considered more dramatic. What happened to the body of Cleopatra is still a mystery.
She's not dead. She's an alien. Yeah, she's with Elvis. There you go. That's it. Oh my God, she moved. She's supposed to be dead. Oh my God. She reached up and scratched her face.
Don't forget, you can still use photo mode at any time.
It's a miracle. All right, that's going to be it for the night. That's going to be it for the Discovery Tour. That was pretty cool, I have to admit. I like that a lot. I'll probably, yeah, exactly. So much history. I'll have to, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? You guys want, I mean, we're planning to start Shadow of the Colossus on Friday. Did you want to see more of this, or did you want me to go into Shadow of the Colossus? I'm fine doing either one. I mean, obviously there's no combat. There's nothing to raise your heart rate in this. You want to see some more of this? All right. We can do that. Let's see. Let's see how much we have left. Let's look at the passport. So I mean, there's still plenty left. Absolutely, there is an achievement, just FYI, for doing all of the daily life ones. I didn't want to just sit there and do all of those because as you can see, I wanted to try and spread it out amongst everything as much as I could. And we may do that on Friday. We might do that on Friday too. Just do a few of each one. So, yeah, if there was enough content, yeah. But yeah, the break from the fighting and the killing and, you know, the freneticness of that kind of stuff, and tension and survival horror. Not bad. Oh, God, I don't know, they need to fix that. Every time we go to a menu screen, they've got to show that to us. I don't know why. Alright, anyway, like I said, that's going to be it. Alright, so what we'll do, we'll push back the start of Shadow of the Colossus until, I don't know, maybe we do this again on Friday and Saturday. We got 4 hours each of those 2 nights, so 8 more hours. You know, we might be able to get through all of it. Who knows? So we'll play it by ear. We'll definitely do it on Friday. We're off tomorrow. You hush. So we'll definitely do it on Friday for 4 hours, and then we'll see where we are. If it's something that we can get done on Saturday, maybe we just go ahead and do it all. And like you said, it is a nice break. It was a nice break from doing all the other stuff that I tend to play. So yeah, we'll do that on Friday. So let's see. Yeah, like I said, tomorrow we're off. We're off on Thursdays and Sundays. Yeah, Alien Isolation is muy bueno. We'll do this on Friday at least, maybe on Saturday as well. We'll get Shadow of the Colossus done. It's next on the schedule for sure. We just might have to push it back a couple days. Thanks, folks, for the follows. And I don't know if we got any hosts tonight or not, but that's fine. Yeah, we'll see you on Friday. I'm gonna take a day off tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe I'll put some of the other alerts back in now that I think we've got some of those issues cleaned up. Nah, that's all right. It's cool. No worries. So yeah, I will see you guys on Friday night. Thanks for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your night and the day off tomorrow. And I'll see you on Friday at 6 o'clock. Have a good one.